Euron Greyjoy, also known as Euron Greyjoy, is another case where technically he is not a missing character, as Euron is in the show. The issue is the show version of Euron is drastically different than the book counterpart, not only in personality, but how he looks, his backstory, and his role in the story moving forward. To me, the lack of book Euron in the show surmises how the show handles the Ironborn plotline altogether. Euron is a member of House Greyjoy, born around the year 258 to 268 AC, and is the eldest of Lord Balon Greyjoy's younger brothers. Euron captains his own ship known as the Silence, a ship crewed entirely by mutes who had their tongue removed. He has his own personal coat of arms of a crow's eye in red with a black pupil beneath and black iron crowns supported by two crows. Euron is pale and said to be a handsome man with black hair and a dark beard. He wears a black patch over his left eye and is nicknamed Crow's Eye. According to his nephew, Euron Greyjoy, the leather patch conceals a black eye shining with malice. Euron's right eye is a beautiful, bright blue and is regarded as his smiling eye. Additionally, his lips are also a pale blue due to his propensity to drinking shade of the evening. In all, it gives him an otherworldly look. Euron is cunning and has a dark reputation in the Iron Islands, but his charisma and quick tongue draws people to his banner. He is hated by his younger brothers. Aeron considers him godless, and Victarion has hated Euron as his brother impregnated his salt wife. Despite his dangerous and dark nature, Euron has no issue in drawing men to his service. While most Ironborn captains keep the lion's share of their plunder, Euron takes almost nothing. He owns a suit of black scale armor with various patterns, glyphs, and arcane symbols on it. His brother Aeron believes it to be made of Valyrian steel, and unlike anything seen in Westeros. When he was a child, Euron dreamt that he could fly. He would often mock his younger brother Victarion, and Aeron has terrible memories associated with Euron and the sound of a rusted iron hinge. In the final years of the Targaryen era of Westeros, Balon Greyjoy and his younger brothers Euron and Victarion convinced their father Lord Quilon Greyjoy to join Robert's rebellion on the side of the rebels, and they spent the war raiding the Reach. However, they had in fact joined the war quite late, and thus much of the true fighting was already done. But after Quilon was killed in the battle on the Manda, the new Lord Balon returned to the Iron Islands with his brothers. At the onset of the Greyjoy's Rebellion in 289 AC, Euron concocted a plan to sail into Lannisport and burn the Lannister fleet while it was still at anchor. Led by Victarion, the Iron Fleet followed Euron's plan and destroyed the Westerland's naval forces, dealing a huge blow to House Lannister and the Crown. Balon's rebellion was eventually defeated by King Robert I Baratheon, ended with the Siege of Pike, in which several of Balon's sons were killed, and his last son, Theon, taken as a ward to Winterfell, under the watchful eye of Eddard Stark. Euron was known to be a prolific reaver. In 297 AC, he was exiled from the Iron Islands by his brother Lord Balon as punishment for forcing himself upon, or as Euron would tell, seducing Victarion's salt wife, and he was warned never to return while Balon was alive. Victarion wanted to kill Euron, and would have if not for the taboo against kinslaying. Euron did not seem to care, and laughed at Victarion when they parted ways. Euron has several bastard children, with even the man himself having no idea how many. He does not hold any regard for them at all. Since Euron's banishment, the Silence has sailed, pillaged, and raided all over the known world, and some say beyond the edges of the map. Euron's boats have travelled to Ashai by the Shadow, a place few Westerosi have ever seen, and even sailed the Smoking Sea and walked the smouldering ruins of Old Valyria, a place even the bravest men fear to tread. He also claims to have owned dragon eggs, which a Myrish wizard was unable to hatch, which he alleges he tossed into the sea during one of his foul moods. The first mention of Euron in the main books comes during the events of A Clash of Kings. Euron Greyjoy, upon returning to Pike for the first time since he was taken to Winterfell as a child, notes that his uncle Euron's ship, Silence, is not part of the fleet gathered at Lannisport. During the events of A Storm of Swords, during the War of Five Kings, news comes to Robb Stark that Balon Greyjoy, the self-proclaimed king of the Iron Islands, had fallen to his death from Pike. Euron returned to Lordsport and claimed the Seastone chair for himself as Balon's eldest brother, despite the claims of Asher Greyjoy, and the presumed dead Theon, dismissing Asher's claim due to the Ironborn never having a ruling queen. When Lord Swain Botley objected to his claim, Euron had him drowned in a cask of seawater. During a feast for crows, we learn that Euron captured galleys out of Qarth and held hostage 4 warlocks, including Priat Pri, one of the warlocks, to interact with Daenerys Targaryen during her stay in Qarth. When one of the warlocks resisted, he killed the man and fed him to the other 3. According to some sources, he also seized their dragon horn. When Euron Greyjoy is informed that his elder brother, Euron, has returned to the Iron Islands the day after Balon's death, he calls for a king's moot to contest Euron's claim to the throne. The timing of Euron's return is questioned by Asher Greyjoy, and Lord Roderick Harlaw and Lord Swain Botley's son, Tristopher, also reports that the Crozai had been bribing supporters with treasure from the Far East. During the King's Moot in Old Wick, Euron has Cragorn below the Dragonhorn, which Euron claims he found in the feared ruins of Valyria, and he brags about having sailed all over the known world, including Ashai. He promises the Ironborn lords to conquer all of Westeros using dragons, which he claims he can bring to his will with the horn. Although Aeron considers his brother to be a godless man, Euron is elected king, besting Victarion, Asher, and the other contenders, much to Aeron's horror. After her loss at the King's Moot, Asher flees from Old Wick, and Aeron disappears, promising to raise the small folk in rebellion. Euron gives treasure from throughout the known world to the Ironborn captains as a reward for voting him their king. The Crozai then has Lord Baelor Blacktide killed when the man refuses to accept him as king, taking Baelor's sable cloak as a trophy. Euron begins raiding upon the coastline of the Reach, intending to sell captives into slavery in Essos. After the taking of the Shield Islands, Euron holds a victory feast at Lord Hewitt's castle, with the Tide and gang Lord Humphrey Hewitt seated next to him. The Crozai forces Humphrey's daughters and granddaughters to serve food and drink to various Ironborn. Euron takes Humphrey's bastard daughter Fela Flowers as his bedmate, and under her suggestion, commands the noble-born ladies to strip and serve his men naked. Euron weakens possible rivals, such as his brother Victarion, by giving land and titles on the Shield Islands to his key followers. However, he fails to move the Ironborn beyond raiding, as they are reluctant to embark on a dangerous journey to Essos in search of dragons, after Lord Harlaw points out all the hazards of such an endeavour. Instead, Euron sends Victarion and the Iron Fleet to find Daenerys Targaryen and to court her in his name, and have her bring her dragons to Westeros, using them to conquer the 7 kingdoms as Aegon once did. As motivation for Victarion, he tells his brother that he can succeed him on the Seastone chair after Euron takes the Iron Throne for himself. Moving on from the Shield Islands, the Ironborn attack up the Mander, Arbor, and reach the Whispering Sound. Queen Regent Cersei Lannister tasks Sir Loras Tyrell with resolving the siege of Dragonstone quickly so the Red Wine fleet can be freed to deal with the Ironborn threat. By the events of A Dance with Dragons, Euron now styles himself King of the Isles and the North, though he claims Balon's conquests in the north, despite losing so much of it, with it now being mostly under the control of House Bolton. With Asher Greyjoy having fled the islands for Deepwood Motte, Euron weds her to Eric Ironmaker, using a seal as proxy, meaning that Asher cannot offer herself in marriage as a form of negotiation with anyone who could support her. Before Victarion Greyjoy departs with the Iron Fleet for Meereen, Euron gives him Maester Cerwyn, an unnamed dusky woman, the Dragonhorn. But unknown to Euron, Victarion plans to claim Queen Daenerys Targaryen as his own bride, instead of bringing her to the Crozai. During his voyage east, Victarion remembers Euron's gifts are poisoned when he hears Mokoro, a rescued Red Priest, state that those who blow the horn die. During the events of the Winds of Winter sample chapters, which are still subject to change, Euron has his mutes capture Aeron Damphair after the King's Moot and imprison him in the belly of the Silence. Euron admits to causing the deaths of Harlon, Robin, and Balon, making him a kinslayer. He also admits he expects his followers, to which he granted the Shield Islands, to fail to hold them, thus ridding himself of potential enemies. Euron no longer wears his driftwood crown, but instead wears an iron crown with points made from shark's teeth. He forces Aeron to drink Shade of the Evening, and the damp hair has visions of Euron on a throne of skulls, and then a bloody iron throne, with gods impaled on its spikes. A later vision sees Euron as a kraken-like figure with a tentacled face on the Iron Throne, with a shadow woman by his side. Prior to sailing against the Red Wine Fleet and the ships of House Hightower, Aeron sees Euron clad in his Valyrian steel armor. Euron has Aeron bound to the prow of the Silence, where he is joined by Feyre Flowers, now pregnant but tongueless. Euron also orders his captains to bind the priest and the septon and the warlocks he had kidnapped to the prows of their respective ships. And until we see the Winds of Winter, that is all we currently know of Euron Greyjoy. Euron presents an interesting situation on the show, as he technically is in it, but his character is so different and stripped back that he's hardly the same character at all. Much of the mystic side of Euron is stripped away in the show, and he very much comes across as just a bit of an insane pirate, rather than the ominous, foreboding figure he is in the books. With elements such as Dragonbinder not making it into the show, as well as Victarion being cut, and Aeron being effectively cut, the Ironborn storyline is very different altogether. I'll go as far as saying that much of Euron's Season 6, 7 and 8 storyline is very much show only, maybe only relating to the book counterpart in his wider goal and aspirations. I know many fans were disappointed about how Euron was handled in the show, but it also appears the actor who played him as well felt the same, having stated in interviews that the character he thought he was going to be playing was not the character that ended up on screen. Along with the handling of the Dawn plotline, the way in which the Ironborn story was stripped down in the show is one of the most disappointing parts of it. Euron is one of the most interesting parts of A Feast for Crows. For me personally, it gave me a reason to look forward to reading the Ironborn chapters, simply to try and learn more about his character and his mysterious backstory that is steeped in mystery.